Hey y'all, in this session, I want to show you how watercolor reacts on the cotton paper versus the non-cotton paper, cold press paper versus hot press paper. So first, let's start with cold versus hot so that you can see the difference. This one here is cold, this one's hot. I want to show you, I'm going to show you with a non-grainy color. So let's just start with this red color here. And you can really see the texture. And the hot press has very little texture. So I'm going to raise this just so you can see the texture versus non-texture. Actually, let me remove a little of this so you can see it even better. So texture, non-texture. Both of these papers have no cotton in them. So let me show you cotton paper. And this is me just laying down the pigment straight. You know, I'm not putting water down first. I'll do that next. Get a little more pigment in here. Oh, I wish you could feel it. I know that sounds so crazy, but I really do. There is a definite, like, the way the brush interacts with the paper is different for each one. The cotton paper, the brush, you really can just feel the watercolor just going into the paper. The cold press, you can feel the texture, and the hot press, it's just so super smooth. It's so interesting to me, the differences. So now let me show you, this is just water. So I'm just wetting the paper. I'm gonna let the water just sit for a moment on each one, just to kind of it's really just letting it soak in to the paper. And then we'll just dip some color in so you can see how it disperses. It's really lovely. Oh, it's just lovely. Watercolor is so much fun. They do the same. They're all reacting with the water, you know, in the same manner. What will happen is they'll kind of dry different. So hopefully I didn't put too much water down so that you can see the differences. I'm looking for some pink just to, woo, look at that. Oh, I love how some colors, did you see how the pink, let's see if it does it over here. This magenta, you see how it pushes the red around, which is just really cool. No matter where I put it, it's just kind of shoving the red around. Oh, it's so cool. I'm just playing. You see what happens? You sit down. I'm telling you, if you just sit down with some paper, some water, some paint, and you just start playing around, asking questions. What happens if I drop, let's do some deep purple. What happens if I just drop a little deep purple in here? Let's just see what that does. See how it interacts on the different papers. I don't like this over here, so you can't see me off. What I'm doing is I'm cleaning my brush in the water, and I'm removing water by dabbing it onto a paper towel. And so now I'm just removing, I'm using the I'm using the brush as a remover. Let's do blue and see what I like that better. Let's see what happens. Okay, this is sheer just playing around. I'm just putting a big old thing of yellow. Let's just see what the yellow does. We'll go on this side, kind of working backwards over here. But look how much texture is here, how little texture is on the hot press paper. Cold press, hot press, cold press, texture, very little texture. Super smooth here. It's so this is how you can see on this side, you really, well, once it's dry, this part is dry. Let me get a brush that has a little finer tip and show you how you really can just come in with some fine detail here. And the detail, you don't lose the edges. The edges stay crisp. You see how crisp the edges are. That's the benefit of this hot press paper. Not that you're not gonna have that here. You can still get that here on the cold press, but the texture is that, so this line is not as smooth as it's going to be on the hot press paper. So, the other thing that's interesting, because the cold press really soaks up the water, it takes, not cold press, cotton. This is cotton paper. The cotton paper, it stays wet a little longer, so it actually gives you time to really work back into it. Like I can come over here because this side is still wet, and I can work into this over here, because all of this pile, A, it was the last pile I had put on, and B, it's the paper. This whole little section right here is wet. And look how, oh, I wish I wouldn't have painted into it, but it did. So let's just do another little section here. The other thing that's interesting is you do, and this is just something to note, something to play with. The cotton paper, when this section dries, it's going to be a little more mottled, have texture in it, maybe redder parts, less red parts, whereas the cotton paper really kind of maintained some solidity in the color, how the color laid down. Even here, it's a little more together, solid, whereas on the paper that has no cotton, no absorbency, it dries a little more all over the place. Like you don't always know what to expect here. A lot of times on the cotton paper, you know what you're gonna get because the paper responds the same every time. Whereas the paper with no cotton content is a little more unpredictable. But that could be fun and beneficial. So I'm gonna set this aside because I do want to compare how those dry. I want to show you the ultramarine, because I told you that some paints are naturally, they just naturally have a texture to them. And ultramarine, ooh, that's a lot of water. Ultramarine is one of those. So let me I'm trying to pull out there so you can see how this dries. This is the cotton cold press paper, and here is my hot press paper, which is smooth, remember. And so and because it has no cotton, it takes less water. Like the water in the cotton paper absorbs so much. You do use more water. You tend to use more water than with the non-cotton paper. So I am just gonna go back. I'm just erasing, because you can erase with watercolor. And so we're gonna let this dry for a moment so that you can see, look at all this gorgeous texture. Ultramarine is truly one of my favorite colors because of all this amazing texture that you get in with this color, no matter what paper you use it on. And you can see that even in the hot press, you can see all the texture that is still there. There are differences also. So I'm just going to set these aside to dry. We'll bring them back in a second. I wanted to show you the difference between brands even. So this is a cold press paper and this is a cold press paper, but this cold press actually has more texture. It's got, I'm going to hold them up hoping that the camera will catch the differences. The texture on the rectangled paper is bigger and the texture on the square paper is a little smaller. So let's just see how that compares with one another. I'm going to pull green this time. Okay, and I'm going to go light-ish so that we can kind of grab okay, this is great. You can really see it. So both of these are cold press papers, but look at the difference texture-wise. The square, less texture. The rectangle, way more texture. You see that? So it is very interesting. All the paper, even though it's cold press, two different brands are going to have two different textures. So this is why I say experiment, buy small pads in the different brands so that you can play, test, compare. Try out, if you work in watercolor and ink and gouache, try all three on the different papers to see what you like. Sometimes, so I work a lot in gouache. I like gouache on hot press paper. I like watercolors on cold press paper. So these are things you will discover as you play. I want to show you this one because both of these papers are cold press. This is one brand, this is a different brand. And you can see how much texture is in these circles. You really this is ultramarine right here. Look at all the texture that is, and in this green, this turquoise is so textured. This one, not so much. The colors laid on smoother, textured, but smooth. So both both cold press, but one's more textured than the other, which is awesome. So once you figure this out brand by brand, you like Fabriano, this is the Fabriano 1264. Always gonna be more textured than the fluid. This is a fluid watercolor pad. So depending on what I'm going for, and look how beautiful this dried with the bloom. It's so nice, and this dried smoother. So once you kind of test out the papers, learn how each paper responds to your medium, your paint, you can figure out, which one do you want for which, what is it that you're trying to achieve? which paper is going to help you achieve that. So so here they're both still wet, but they're dry enough that we can kind of do a comparison. And you can see that even though this is hot press paper, the ultramarine maintained its texture because it is a textural paint in general. So both the cold press and the hot press paper is going to reveal the texture there. So I hope this session educated you, taught you some things about paper, showed you the differences between hot press, cold press, even cold press between different brands. Usually hot press is hot press. No matter what the brand is, the hot press paper is going to be pretty smooth. And there's also Bristol board, which is smooth. I like to use gouache paint on Bristol board because it takes water media, but it's even, I feel like it's even smoother than hot press watercolor paper. So, but that's a category in and of itself. We will talk about that paper on another day. So happy painting, y'all. Happy experimenting. Remember to play and have fun.